He divorced his wife at a Christmas party, then discovered she owned his $30 billion company. Snow drifted against the tall windows of the Grayson Hotel ballroom, frosting the golden lights with a fragile glow. Clara Hale stood near the Christmas tree, smoothing the emerald dress her husband had chosen, smiling politely at strangers who praised his rising career. Everyone knew Marcus Hale tonight, the charming executive hosting a lavish party, yet no one noticed the quiet woman beside him who still carried grocery coupons in her purse. Clara had always been careful with money, even after marrying Marcus. She remembered her grandfather's small bookshop, the smell of old pages, and the way he whispered stories about courage while counting pennies for tea. He had died 3 weeks ago, leaving her only a sealed letter she had not yet opened, because grief felt heavier than curiosity. Music swelled, glasses clinked, and Marcus tapped a spoon to draw attention. His smile was practiced, sharp at the edges. "Friends, thank you for coming," he announced. "This year has been about change, and I have one final change to make." Clara's heart fluttered, thinking he might surprise her with a vow renewal or some sweet confession. Instead, Marcus turned, holding a thin envelope like a blade. "Clara, I'm filing for divorce. You deserve honesty and I deserve freedom." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Clara felt her cheeks burn, but she remained still, dignity stitching her together. Marcus leaned close, whispering so only she could hear. "I'm done pretending to be poor with you. I've met someone better." A waiter brushed past, and Clara's sealed letter slipped from her clutch, falling open on the marble floor. She bent to retrieve it, but a single line caught her eye, printed in her grandfather's careful hand. "My darling Clara, you are now the sole heir to Grayson Holdings, valued at $30 billion. Her breath vanished. The room blurred, yet Marcus kept talking loudly about independence and new beginnings, basking in sympathetic nods. Clara folded the letter and slipped it back inside, her fingers trembling, not from fear, but from a sudden electric clarity. $30 billion meant every night she had worried about bills was a lie now, every compromise unnecessary. She looked at Marcus, seeing him not as a husband, but as a man who had misjudged the quiet strength he mocked. "Do you have anything to say?" Marcus asked, enjoying his audience. Clara lifted her chin. "Not tonight," she replied softly. "Tonight is Christmas." Laughter trickled, awkward and uncertain. Marcus scoffed, assuming victory, unaware the ground beneath him had already begun to crack. Clara stepped back beneath the glowing tree, holding her grandfather's secret close, feeling something new awaken inside her, something fierce and patient, ready to rewrite every story Marcus thought he controlled. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in clean white promise, as Clara smiled for the first time since her grandfather's funeral, knowing this betrayal was only the beginning of a far greater reckoning. Her destiny quietly waited, sharpening its glittering edge. The night after the party, Clara slipped into her quiet apartment, the city humming beyond frosted glass, and opened her grandfather's letter with shaking hands. Each line confirmed lawyers, trusts, and companies now belonged to her, a universe of power delivered with tender affection, urging her to be brave and kind, reminding her of childhood lessons about dignity and patience that money could not erase, even when it arrived in overwhelming waves of unimaginable abundance, and startling responsibility settling onto her slender shoulders like a velvet cloak stitched by destiny itself, under winter stars that suddenly felt closer than ever. She sank onto the sofa, tears blurring ink, thinking of Marcus's smug smile and how easily he dismissed her gentle thrift, never realizing it was born from respect for every earned dollar. Clara wiped her cheeks and imagined the future, not with revenge alone, but with fairness, determined to protect employees and families tied to her grandfather's empire. Yet a quiet fire burned too, a promise that betrayal would not go unanswered when justice demanded courage. She stood, breathing deeply, feeling fear melt into resolve like snow into river water, flowing strong and unstoppable toward a horizon she could finally plot. The next morning, Clara met the estate attorney who bowed slightly, revealing documents thicker than any novel she had read, each page a testament to her grandfather's hidden genius. He explained offshore accounts, philanthropic foundations, and a controlling stake in Grayson Holdings, the very company Marcus worked for. Clara nearly laughed, stunned by the symmetry of fate, yet she kept her composure, signing carefully while imagining Marcus's face when truth arrived. With every stroke of her pen, she felt ownership settle deeper into her bones, turning uncertainty into authority that felt strange but thrilling, like learning to fly above old. By afternoon, news spread quietly through boardrooms as Clara's legal team requested an emergency meeting, and executives scrambled to prepare. Marcus remained blissfully unaware, posting holiday photos with his new lover, mocking the life he left behind. Clara watched from her phone, sadness flickering briefly before stealing into calm. She would not humiliate him publicly tonight. She would let consequences speak louder than insults. Power, she realized, was best used with precision, not cruelty. Still, the memory of his whispered betrayal sharpened her focus, reminding her why mercy sometimes needed a firm edge to protect the innocent and restore balance. As dusk fell, Clara prepared for the board meeting, dressing simply, the same emerald gown now paired with confidence no one could buy. She whispered a thank you to her grandfather, promising to honor his legacy with wisdom and strength. Outside, bells rang for Christmas, and she smiled, knowing tonight would unwrap a different kind of gift. When Marcus finally learned who truly owned his glittering world, his carefully built illusions would crumble, and Clara would stand steady amid the ruins, ready to build something kinder, stronger, and undeniably hers, from the ashes of broken vows and misplaced pride. The boardroom of Grayson Holdings shimmered with polished glass and quiet panic as executives whispered about the sudden summons. Clara entered without announcement, her heels echoing like soft thunder, and every head turned toward the woman they barely knew, yet already legally answered to. She felt their surprise ripple through the air, but she held it calmly, remembering her grandfather's steady voice telling her never to fear rooms filled with powerful men, because true power always listened before it spoke. The chairman rose, stunned. "Mrs. Hale, we were expecting—" "You were expecting someone else," Clara said gently. "But my grandfather made his wishes clear." She slid a folder across the table, and the lawyer beside her confirmed her authority in crisp, unquestionable tones. One by one, the executives realized the quiet woman they had overlooked now controlled their futures. Meanwhile, Marcus strutted into the building, still glowing from his public victory, ready to boast about his impending freedom. When he saw Clara through the glass walls, his smile froze. He laughed nervously, pushing open the door. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "This is a private meeting." Clara met his eyes, steady and unafraid. "So am I, Marcus. This company belongs to me now." He scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Don't be ridiculous. You never even cared about money." "That's true," she replied. "But my grandfather did, and he cared about me." Silence fell as the chairman announced the truth. Clara Hale was now the majority shareholder of Grayson Holdings, worth $30 billion. Marcus's face drained of color, disbelief cracking into horror. He tried to speak, but no words came. Clara felt a flicker of sadness for the man she once loved, yet it faded beneath clarity. "You served me divorce papers," she said softly, "so I will not interfere in your personal life. But professionally, your future is no longer yours to gamble." Marcus stammered, pleading that he had been loyal, that misunderstandings had occurred, but the room had already judged him. Clara nodded to the board. "I want a full review of Mr. Hale's conduct," she said. "If he has acted against the company, he will be removed." Security approached. Marcus reached for Clara's arm, but she stepped back. "This is not revenge," she told him quietly. "It is accountability." As he was escorted out, his world collapsed in real time, replaced by the weight of consequences he never imagined. Clara watched through the glass, her heart aching but unbroken. She turned back to the board, straightening her shoulders. "Gentlemen," she said, "let's begin rebuilding." Outside, Marcus's desperate shouts faded into the hum of the city, while Clara claimed her place, not as a discarded wife, but as a woman who had finally stepped into her own powerful, complicated destiny. News of Marcus's removal spread through the company like wildfire, and by the time Clara returned home, reporters already waited outside, hungry for scandal and riches. She slipped past them quietly, still wearing the same emerald dress, feeling strangely untouched by the chaos she had ignited. Inside her apartment, she finally allowed herself to breathe, the weight of power settling into something real, something that could no longer be ignored. Marcus called her phone again and again, his voice shifting from anger to desperation, but Clara did not answer. She remembered the nights she had waited for him to come home, worrying about money while he dreamed of luxury. Now the tables had turned, and he stood alone, facing the emptiness he had created. Clara whispered a prayer for his healing, even as she refused to rescue him from his own choices. The next morning, Clara met with her grandfather's longtime staff, people who had known her since childhood and welcomed her with warm, tearful smiles. They told her stories of the empire he built, not just with profit, but with loyalty and kindness. Clara listened carefully, determined not to become cold or cruel beneath the glitter of wealth. She approved raises for factory workers and renewed charitable programs, honoring the values she had been taught. Marcus, meanwhile, tried to salvage his reputation, telling anyone who would listen that Clara had tricked him, that she was manipulative and secretive. But the truth, backed by legal documents and boardroom votes, drowned out his lies. Investors rallied behind Clara, impressed by her calm leadership and ethical vision. That evening, Clara stood on the balcony of her new office, watching city lights shimmer like scattered diamonds. For a moment, she felt lonely, missing the simple love she once believed she had. Yet she also felt free, unburdened by a marriage that had slowly erased her worth. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "I made a mistake. Please, we can fix this." Clara closed her eyes, remembering the cold humiliation of the Christmas party, the laughter that followed his betrayal. She typed a single reply. "You ended us. I'm just finishing the paperwork." As she sent it, a quiet strength filled her chest. She had inherited more than money. She had inherited the courage to choose herself. And though the world around her had changed forever, Clara knew she was finally standing on ground that belonged to her alone, ready for whatever storms or blessings might come next. Days turned into weeks, and Clara settled into her new life with a focus that surprised even her. She rose early, studied financial reports, and met with teams who had once been invisible to executives like Marcus. They spoke to her with cautious hope, and Clara answered with honesty, promising transparency and respect. Slowly, the company began to heal from years of careless ambition. Marcus, however, was unraveling. Without his position, his friends drifted away, and the woman he had left Clara for stopped answering his calls. He watched news segments about Clara's leadership, each one a reminder of what he had thrown away. Desperate, he tried once more to see her, waiting outside her office with roses and apologies that rang hollow. Clara faced him in the lobby, not with anger, but with firm resolve. "Marcus, please stop," she said quietly. "You don't miss me. You miss the life you lost." His eyes filled with tears, but he had no answer. Security escorted him away, and Clara returned to work, her heart aching yet steady. That afternoon, she approved a major investment in community housing, remembering families like hers who had struggled. Reporters praised her compassion, calling her a new kind of billionaire, one who cared. Clara smiled at the irony. She was still the same woman who clipped coupons, just now with the power to change more than her own life. Late that night, she visited her grandfather's old bookshop, now preserved as a small museum. She ran her fingers along the shelves, feeling his presence in every worn spine. "I hope I'm doing right," she whispered. In the quiet, she realized revenge had never truly been her goal. What she wanted was dignity, fairness, and a future built on truth. Marcus had lost everything because he chased illusions. Clara had gained everything by staying herself. As she locked the shop and stepped into the cool night, she felt lighter than she had in years. The empire was hers, but more importantly, so was her story. And for the first time since that painful Christmas, Clara looked forward, not back, ready to write the next chapter on her own terms. Spring arrived gently, softening the city Clara once knew only through winter glass. With it came new beginnings for Grayson Holdings, now thriving under her careful guidance. Profits rose, but so did employee morale, and Clara took pride in walking through offices where people smiled instead of whispered. She had learned that true wealth was not measured only in numbers, but in the lives improved along the way. One afternoon, Clara received a letter from Marcus. It was not a plea this time, but a confession. He admitted his greed, his fear of seeming ordinary, and the shame he carried for hurting the one person who had loved him without conditions. Clara read it slowly, feeling both sadness and pleasure. She placed it in a drawer, not to forget, but to remind herself how far she had come. That evening, she hosted a small charity gala in honor of her grandfather. Instead of glittering excess, the room was filled with warmth, stories, and gratitude from people whose lives had been changed by his quiet generosity. Clara spoke about him with a trembling voice, telling everyone how he taught her to see worth where others saw nothing. Across the room, she noticed a man listening intently, not with admiration for her fortune, but for her words. His name was Daniel, a journalist who covered social impact rather than scandal. Their conversation flowed easily, grounded in shared values rather than status. For the first time in months, Clara laughed without thinking of Marcus. Later, as the evening wound down, Clara stepped outside beneath blooming trees, breathing in the sweet air. She realized she no longer felt defined by betrayal. The pain had shaped her, but it no longer controlled her. Marcus's shadow had faded, replaced by something brighter, something hopeful. Clara knew love might come again, different and stronger, built on respect instead of convenience. As she returned inside, she felt her grandfather's spirit beside her, proud and peaceful, as if to say she had turned heartbreak into something beautiful. The empire was secure, her heart healing, and the future, once so frightening, now glowed with possibility she was finally brave enough to embrace. Summer bathed the city in golden light as Clara's name became synonymous with integrity and quiet power. Under her leadership, Grayson Holdings expanded into renewable energy and affordable healthcare, changing lives far beyond the polished boardrooms where her journey had begun. Yet, despite the headlines, Clara remained grounded, still carrying her grandfather's old watch in her purse, like a small, steady heartbeat, reminding her who she was. Daniel and Clara grew closer, sharing long walks and honest conversations that felt refreshingly simple. He never asked for favors or access, only for her stories, and she found herself trusting again, slowly and carefully. Love, she realized, was not a dramatic promise, but a gentle presence that made space for growth. One afternoon, Marcus appeared at the edge of a charity event, thinner, quieter, almost unrecognizable. He did not approach Clara, only watched from afar as she spoke with donors and children whose schools her foundation had rebuilt. In that moment, he understood the depth of what he had lost, not just wealth, but a woman who had become something extraordinary without ever losing her kindness. Clara noticed him too. Their eyes met briefly, and she offered a small, calm nod. There was no anger left, only acceptance. The chapter they had shared was closed, sealed by time and truth. As the sun dipped low, Clara took the stage, thanking everyone who believed in her vision. Applause filled the air, warm and genuine. She thought of the frightened woman at the Christmas party, humiliated and unaware of her worth, and felt a quiet gratitude for the storm that had forced her to rise. When Daniel squeezed her hand, she smiled, knowing she had not only inherited an empire, but also the courage to build a life that was honest, compassionate, and finally, truly her own. Autumn arrived with crisp winds and amber leaves, mirroring the quiet maturity Clara now carried within her. Grayson Holdings stood stronger than ever, not because of ruthless ambition, but because of the values her grandfather had planted long ago and she had chosen to nurture. Employees felt proud, communities felt supported, and Clara felt at peace. One evening, she visited her grandfather's grave, laying a small bouquet beside the stone. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" she whispered, smiling through gentle tears. "You trusted me even when I didn't know who I was yet." In the stillness, she felt his love surrounding her like a warm embrace. Daniel joined her later, not with grand promises, but with quiet companionship. They talked about books, about dreams, about building a future that honored both kindness and courage. Clara realized she was no longer afraid of being loved, because she had learned first how to love herself. Far across the city, Marcus struggled to rebuild his life from the fragments of his own choices. He no longer blamed Clara. Instead, he finally understood that greed had cost him something priceless. That understanding, though painful, was the beginning of his own redemption. Clara returned to her penthouse, looking out over a city glowing with possibility. The girl who had been humiliated at a Christmas party was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth beyond numbers. With a steady heart and a hopeful smile, Clara stepped into tomorrow, carrying both her grandfather's legacy and her own, ready to lead, to love, and to live a story no betrayal could ever diminish. The end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more powerful stories. Comment your thoughts below. Thank you.